You think discounts mean deals? What if they're actually warning signs of collapse?
Taking big losses, slashing prices on inventory with the goal of moving inventory and trying to move forward in 2024.
Right now, fire sale prices aren't generosity. They're desperation. Dealers are torching brands just to pay the bank. Every slashed sticker price tells the same story. Survival at any cost, even if it burns the entire market to the ground. So who's really profiting from these sales? Why are families paying twice for the cheapest RVOS? And what happens when the warranty vanishes before your first trip? By the end, you'll know why the biggest bargains are the most dangerous traps. Daily burn. The numbers are brutal. Each morning, a small-town RV dealer unlocks his lot knowing the son has already stolen more than $10,000 from his balance sheet. Floor plan financing, once manageable at interest rates of 3%, has ballooned to double digits. A single motorhome that cost $120,000 to stock now drains nearly $40 per day in interest alone. Multiply that across 200 units, many of them sitting untouched for half a year, and the dealer is burning 5 figures daily just for the right to keep those rigs on asphalt. He calls it paying rent on a graveyard. The stress shows in his face as he walks past rows of gleaming, unsold models. Every unpaid day feels like a shovel of dirt on his own business. The true choke point lay beyond spreadsheets, hidden in unsold rigs standing like monuments to debt. Silent engines revealed a deeper trap, where overwhelming abundance transformed into paralysis and suffocation almost overnight. Lot graveyards. The supply chain became the dealer's jailer. Manufacturers, eager to keep assembly lines moving, kept shipping coaches even as showrooms went silent. Factory quotas and contractual allocations left dealers with little choice, but to accept inventory, they could not move. Tractor trailers arrived weekly, unloading units that went straight into overflow fields already jammed with unsold rigs. Aerial photos of some dealerships look less like sales centers and more like industrial storage yards, with motorhomes lined in endless rows. Each new delivery was supposed to be an opportunity, yet it only deepened the trap. Dealers begged manufacturers for a slowdown, but production momentum and pressure from investors kept the pipeline flowing. Instead of moving from factory floor to family campsite, thousands of units sat idle, baking in the sun, eroding confidence with every unsold day. Overflowing lots brought more than empty vistas. They spawned spiraling costs, compounding hourly. Each idle vehicle deepened the darkness, stacking expenses so high that every faint glimmer of profit vanished instantly beneath crushing financial weight. Cost stack. The finance manager lays it out plainly. The expense pile is taller than the RVS themselves. Floor plan interest is just the first layer. Insurance premiums on hundreds of high-value vehicles eat thousands monthly. Utility bills soar to light cavernous showrooms, and power climate systems meant to impress buyers who rarely arrive. Security costs rise as lots become easy targets for thieves. Even storage fees mount when overflow lots must be leased. On paper, each rig should generate healthy margins. But in reality, every unsold unit becomes a bonfire of expense. One dealer joked grimly that he sells payments to the bank more reliably than he sells campers to families. For many, the supposed profits have already turned to ash, their only constant being bills stacked higher than the tallest fifth wheel on the lot. When the math became unbearable, survival demanded new rules. Dealers realized the true enemies weren't bills, but rivals wielding vast networks and leverage. Competition shifted from calculators to corporations armed with overwhelming scale. If this breakdown is opening your eyes, hit subscribe and drop a comment with your take. Your feedback keeps these stories alive and fuels deeper investigations that matter. Giant advantage. In this storm, scale becomes a weapon. Mega dealers with national footprints renegotiate credit terms, spreading risk across dozens of locations. They slash overhead with mass layoffs and leverage advertising budgets that small independents cannot hope to match. Some even use their size to pressure manufacturers for exclusive models, leaving mom-and-pop dealers with yesterday's leftovers. Industry reports describe aggressive consolidation. Giants acquiring struggling stores at pennies on the dollar, then folding those rooftops into sprawling empires. For the independents, survival feels impossible. A single-location dealer watches as a competitor 3 states away runs commercials promising discounts he could never afford. The playing field isn't merely uneven, it's collapsing beneath their feet. And yet, even the giants cannot escape the shadow looming across the entire industry. Even the titans, fortified by billions, could not mask the silence in every showroom. Customers were gone, and their rejection of modern RVs spoke louder than balance sheets ever could. Bill shock. Families still love the dream of open roads, campfires, and lakeside mornings. What they do not love is the crushing math attached to that dream. Financing a motorhome that costs $120,000 now means a monthly payment well above $1,000 before insurance premiums, fuel, and maintenance are factored in. A single flat tire on a large coach can cost $800 to replace, and storage fees for suburban owners can top $100 each month. Add rising insurance quotes, some policies exceeding $300 monthly, and the romance of travel turns into an arithmetic nightmare. Consumers look at their household budgets and see vacations shrinking, grocery bills swelling, and wages barely keeping pace. They are not rejecting the lifestyle. They are rejecting the debt load attached to it. Dealers misread this shift, thinking discounts would lure buyers back. Families still walking the lots weren't swayed by glossy ads. Crushing payments and rising insurance devoured incomes, so stability triumphed over novelty, leaving brand new RVs languishing under lights, already perceived as outdated relics, instant obsolete. The paradox of modern RVs is that the newest ones feel the oldest the fastest. Buyers walk into showrooms dazzled by touchscreens, Wi-Fi boosters, and Bluetooth-enabled control panels. Yet within months, those same gadgets feel dated, much like smartphones after a software cycle. A rig built in 2024 risks looking stale in 2025, simply because upholstery colors or appliance packages changed. Shoppers see through the illusion of latest and greatest. One couple described it bluntly: why pay full price for something that looks outdated by next summer? Dealers now face the cruelest irony. The longer an RV sits unsold, the less desirable it becomes. Not because it is damaged, but because perception erodes value faster than depreciation tables ever predicted. Families want timeless reliability, not flashy obsolescence. The RV industry's obsession with constant redesign has turned inventory into yesterday's news overnight. The choke point hid beyond spreadsheets, in rows of unsold rigs resembling monuments to debt. Each silent engine exposed a deeper trap, where overwhelming abundance swiftly transformed into paralysis and suffocation overnight. Used Mirage. For a brief moment, the used market looked like salvation. Families unwilling to shoulder six-figure loans lined up for affordable trade-ins. Dealers moved units that were cheaper, easier to finance, and often more trusted by cautious buyers. But the fix soon cracked under its own weight. Trade-in values collapsed as new sales stalled, leaving dealers underwater on appraisal guarantees. Reconditioning costs exploded, replacing worn upholstery, repairing slide-outs, and updating outdated appliances devoured margins that were already thin. Service bays overflowed, technicians burned out, and customers waiting for promised delivery grew restless. In one dealership, the backlog for preparing used RVs stretched more than 6 weeks, leaving frustrated buyers to walk away. What saved cash flow one week destroyed credibility the next. Used inventory could not permanently mask the rot underneath. The system bent under pressure, and everyone involved sensed that stability was a mirage. Reconditioning delays stretched into weeks, credibility collapsed, and frustrated customers walked away. Staff drowned in overtime until the chilling signal came, not from buyers or dealers, but factories themselves, quietly issuing unmistakable warnings of retreat. Factory doubt. The clearest sign of trouble came not from the lots, but from the boardrooms. Major manufacturers, once bullish on endless growth, began slashing forecasts. Earnings calls that once promised record shipments turned into cautionary tales about slowing retail demand and bloated dealer inventory. Executives spoke carefully, but the message was obvious. The downturn was not a seasonal dip, it was structural. When original equipment makers trim production schedules, warn investors, and quietly halt expansion projects, confidence across the channel collapses. Dealers who once reassured employees that next season will be better now whisper about cutbacks and closures. The industry is not merely catching its breath, it is bracing for a long winter. If the factories themselves no longer believe in quick recovery, what chance does a family-owned store in rural America have? That creeping doubt turned into the next tightening vice. Factories slashing forecasts confirmed dealer fears. The downturn was permanent. Production slowed, confidence shattered, and survival hinged on banks. Patience ended, demands hardened, and lenders turned overnight into merciless arbiters of which businesses lived or died. Credit clamp. For many dealers, the most terrifying phone call does not come from an angry customer, but from their lender. Banks that once eagerly extended floor plan credit now demand curtailments, mandatory paydowns on aged inventory. Units that have sat more than 180 days trigger red flags. Lenders order partial repayment or threaten to freeze new shipments. Covenant checks, once a formality, become nooses tightening around already exhausted owners. A dealer who owed $14 million in financed inventory suddenly faces a demand for $2 million in immediate repayment. He cannot sell enough rigs to raise the cash, so he mortgages his home to keep the bank at bay. Every conversation with creditors is a reminder that survival no longer depends on selling RVS, but on satisfying financial covenants. Dealers describe it as living with a leash that shortens every month. When lenders snapped the leash, panic surged. Dealers facing impossible repayment orders launched fire sales, torching brands to raise cash. Desperation went public. Every discount whispering collapse far louder than advertisements ever promised genuine bargains. Brand fire. The first instinct under pressure is liquidation. Dealers slash prices, host marathon weekend sales, and quietly offload rigs through wholesale auctions. At first, the cash relief feels like a lifeline, but the consequences quickly become catastrophic. Families who paid full price months earlier see nearly identical models advertised at 40% off, and their trust evaporates. Brand prestige burns away as consumers begin to assume that all RVS are worth less than half of sticker price. Some dealers take the desperation further, listing units on digital marketplaces under private aliases, disguising themselves to avoid damaging their reputations. Each transaction keeps the lights on for another week, but the broader market perception collapses. Even manufacturers cringe as residual values nosedive, undermining future financing and leasing programs. In trying to save themselves, dealers torch the very brands that once gave them identity. Smoke from fire sales opened doors for giants. Scale turned crisis into conquest as mega dealers absorbed rivals. Efficiency, consolidation, and vast leverage redefined survival until a stronger force emerged, reshaping consumer desire beyond corporate calculation. Shield of scale. For the largest dealership groups, crisis is opportunity. Chains with dozens of rooftops spread their risk, renegotiate credit at favorable terms, and wield billion-dollar floor plans that independents can only dream of. They cut costs with ruthless efficiency, closing underperforming locations and laying off hundreds while protecting their strongest markets. Advertising campaigns saturate entire regions, promising buyers deals that small-town competitors cannot match. Consolidation accelerates as giants scoop up struggling independents for pennies on the dollar, adding volume and territory at fire sale prices. Publicly traded groups assure investors that market share is rising, even while unit sales shrink overall. Scale acts like armor, insulating them from the daily panic that defines smaller operators. Yet even within these fortified walls, executives admit a deeper fear. No matter how efficient the empire, they cannot conjure buyers who have already chosen another path. For all their armor, the superchains faced an enemy they couldn't outspend. American families began rewriting leisure itself, choosing cabins, rentals, and e-bikes instead of motorhomes. This wasn't competition across showrooms. It was cultural rejection that made entire dealer networks irrelevant. Lifestyle shift. The harshest competitor to RV dealerships is not another chain or manufacturer. It is the changing behavior of American families. Instead of committing to a $100,000 motorhome, couples book cabins through short-term rental platforms. Parents who once dreamed of hauling trailers across the country now invest in e-bikes, scooters, or overseas vacations. Some rent RVS for a week through peer-to-peer apps, experiencing the lifestyle without the crushing debt. Others simply embrace staycations, turning backyards into mini campsites and pocketing the savings. The cultural shift is profound. Owning an RV once symbolized freedom. Now many see it as a financial trap. Dealers cannot fight this competitor with discounts or ad campaigns because it is not about price, it is about preference. And when preference changes, entire industries collapse. With lifestyles shifting away from ownership, the fallout radiated beyond showrooms. Communities lost service centers, workers lost jobs, and policymakers faced mounting pressure. The crisis escaped dealership walls and began redrawing maps, laws, and livelihoods, setting the stage for national upheaval. RV deserts. The collapse of dealerships is not just a financial story, it is a geographic one. In states where a handful of family-owned lots once anchored entire rural economies, closures now leave yawning gaps. A buyer in western Nebraska may need to drive more than 200 miles to find a certified RV dealer, while residents of northern Maine face similar journeys. Without local sales and service, entire regions become what analysts call RV deserts. Warranty work, once a short drive away, now demands long trips and overnight stays. Communities that relied on dealership jobs, technicians, sales staff, and porters watch payrolls vanish and tax bases shrink. For families who still want to camp, the nearest service appointment can take weeks to schedule, making ownership more burdensome than ever. Access is not just shrinking, it is evaporating. As vast territories turned into RV deserts, local frustration ignited political battles. Lawmakers seized the spotlight, pointing fingers at tariffs, rates, and regulations. What began as a retail collapse escalated into policy combat, with every faction determined to shape the outcome. Road wars? As dealerships collapsed, lawmakers rushed to assign blame. Some pointed to interest rates that had soared from historic lows to punishing highs in only 2 years. Others demanded tariffs on imported components, claiming overseas suppliers were undercutting domestic production. State legislatures fought over dealer protection laws, with some insisting on preserving franchise networks and others pushing for direct-to-consumer sales models. The result was a political road war where every policy choice carried economic consequences. Raising tariffs made RVS more expensive. Cutting dealer protections threatened small businesses. Allowing direct sales risked accelerating closures but promised lower prices. Policymakers faced a dilemma: preserve a fading industry or open the door to a new retail model. Either way, their decisions would reshape not just sales, but entire communities that depended on RV culture for tourism and commerce. While politicians sparred in capitals, the true shock registered on shop floors. Workers carried the collapse in their hands and on their backs. Every layoff, every lost paycheck, every desperate pivot toward mobile service revealed the human cost governments couldn't legislate away. Labor reckoning. While executives debated policy, workers felt the collapse most directly. Technicians who had spent decades mastering plumbing systems, electrical diagnostics, and slide-out repairs suddenly found themselves unemployed. Porters and salespeople, once the friendly faces of the dealership, joined unemployment lines as payrolls shrank. In some regions, unions began stirring, arguing that mass layoffs and longer hours for survivors violated safety and wage agreements. Meanwhile, a new form of labor emerged: mobile service fleets. Independent technicians in vans began traveling directly to customers' driveways, offering repairs without the overhead of a dealership. This shift empowered some workers, but left many behind. The reckoning was clear. The traditional dealership workforce was shrinking, fragmented, and uncertain about the future. For many, the choice was stark: adapt to a new mobile economy or leave the industry altogether. For buyers, the wreckage of the industry surfaced as too good to believe offers. Bargains glittered on paper, yet carried explosive risks in practice. What promised freedom often delivered financial chains, reminding consumers that in collapse, the cheapest deal can prove most dangerous. If you've followed this collapse all the way here, make sure to subscribe right now. Bigger revelations are coming, and you don't want to be the one left behind. Dangerous discounts. For consumers, the collapse brought both temptation and danger. Fire sale discounts made brand new RVS look irresistible, with some units selling for less than half their sticker price. Families signed contracts believing they had secured the deal of a lifetime. But hidden costs soon turned bargains into burdens. Insurance premiums on six-figure rigs remained sky-high, regardless of purchase price. Storage fees devoured hundreds each month. Fuel bills mounted as gas prices climbed. Worst of all, many of these rigs came from brands or dealers that no longer existed, leaving warranties orphaned and parts impossible to source. A couple in Ohio who bought a discounted motorhome for $60,000 faced repair bills of $15,000 within a year, with no manufacturer support. The lesson spread quickly: cheap does not mean safe. In fact, the wrong deal could sink a family's finances for years, because the next selling season won't be about who sells the most, it will be about who survives at all. You've just seen how an industry that once symbolized freedom is now collapsing under its own weight. The question is, what happens when the cracks reach your driveway? If you found value in this breakdown, make sure you subscribe right now, because the next story won't just explain what's happening, it will show you what's coming for your wallet, your job, and your future. Don't miss it. Stay ahead. Stay prepared.